So, for more than 20 years, one guy has basically been the center of the universe for Russian power. But what happens when that center just isn't there anymore? That's what we're digging into today. We're going inside the Kremlin to look at this quiet but incredibly high-stakes race to succeed Vladimir Putin. And believe me, this isn't just about Russia. It could change everything for all of us.
Okay, first things first, let's talk about why this matters so much. The stakes are, well, they're about as high as they get. Russia has the biggest nuclear arsenal on the entire planet. So yeah, the question of who gets their hands on those launch codes if things get messy in the Kremlin, that's the kind of thing that genuinely keeps world leaders up at night. And it's not just the nukes. Russia has this incredible grip on the world's energy. We're talking about a huge chunk of the natural gas that flows around the globe. So any little hint of instability over in Moscow, and boom, you see gas prices going through the roof everywhere. This makes the whole succession thing not just a political drama, but a massive global economic headache. Now you might be thinking this is some far-off problem for the future, right? Wrong. The game is already on. Right now, behind those famous Kremlin walls, there's this quiet, intense power struggle happening. Russia's most powerful people are all trying to get into position, all thinking about what a world after Putin looks like.
So, who are the big players in this Game of Thrones Russian style? Well, to figure out who might come out on top, we've got to first get a handle on how power actually works in Putin's Russia. It's not as simple as it looks. Okay, so if you look at the official documents, Russia is a federation, they have elections, all that stuff. But in reality, it's what experts call a personalist authoritarian system. Now, what does that even mean? The best way to think about it is like a huge corporation where the CEO has the final word on everything. No one on the board, nobody, can overrule him. Putin is that CEO. He's the ultimate referee, settling fights between all the powerful people and factions in the country.
And honestly, this is where Putin has been incredibly savvy. He's managed to keep this really delicate balance between all of Russia's most powerful groups. You see, he plays the security guys off the economic whizzes and pits them against the big state companies. He makes sure no single group ever gets strong enough to be a threat to him. The whole thing, the entire system, is held together by him personally.
But, and this is the key, it's a super fragile balancing act. You take Putin out of the picture, and what happens? All those competing groups would immediately start fighting for the top spot. So that brings us to the big question. Who are the real kingmakers when a succession fight kicks off?
Well, let me introduce you to the Siloviki. It literally means the men of force. These are the heavy hitters from Russia's security and intelligence agencies. You can think of them as the true guardians of the state. And here's the bottom line. Nobody can rule Russia without their stamp of approval. Period.
So where does their power come from? It's rooted in the scariest institutions in the country. The FSB, which is basically the new KGB, the GRU, that's military intelligence, and the massive National Guard. When a crisis hits, these are the guys who have the loyalty of the people with the guns. And that gives them the final say.
And if you want proof, just look at how much Russia spends on defense. It is a huge chunk of their national budget, way more than the NATO target. Even with all these crippling sanctions, the security services always get their money. And why is that? It's simple. Their loyalty is the price the regime has to pay to survive.
And all that spending is driven by this core belief, something you hear all the time from hardliners like Nikolai Patrushev. They genuinely believe the West is out to destroy Russia. This creates this besieged fortress mindset. And what that means for a successor is pretty clear. Anyone the Siloviki backed is probably going to see the world in the exact same confrontational way.
Okay, so the Siloviki are the muscle of the state. But who's the brain? Well, that would be the Technocrats. These are the super smart, non-political managers who actually run Russia's economy. Their job is to keep the whole system stable and working, even when it's under incredible pressure.
Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin is the perfect example of a technocrat. The guy is an administrative genius. He gets credit for totally overhauling Russia's bureaucracy. But here's the twist. His competence is also his biggest weakness. He doesn't have his own power base, no personal loyalty from the security guys. That means he's completely dependent on the Siloviki to stay in his job.
Now, a lot of people in the West still have this idea that Russia's billionaire oligarchs are the ones really pulling the strings. And look, back in the chaotic 90s, they absolutely were. But when Putin came to power, that was a major turning point. He basically made them an offer they couldn't refuse. You can keep your money, but you stay out of politics. For good. And just like that, their political power was gone.
So fast forward to today.
Their assets abroad are frozen, their influence at home is shot. The oligarchs just aren't kingmakers anymore, not even close. They're now totally at the mercy of the Kremlin, with basically zero real power to influence who comes next.
Okay, Section 2, the Ukraine War's Shadow, how conflict reshaped the power dynamics. So you have this internal power balance, right? Well, it was about to get completely shaken up by a massive external shock, the war in Ukraine. It hasn't just redrawn the map of Eastern Europe, it's also completely redrawn the map of power inside the Kremlin itself.
The war has created this really stark and frankly dangerous paradox. On one hand, Russia's military has taken a beating on the battlefield, but on the other hand, the conflict has actually made the hardline Siloviki back home stronger. For them, this war proves they were right all along. It's a vindication of their whole worldview, and it gives them the perfect excuse to push for an even more authoritarian Russia.
And this is where we get to Section 3, the West's big mistake, and why secession won't mean normalization. Because this growing power of the hardliners, it points to a really dangerous misunderstanding that's pretty common in the West.
You hear it a lot, and it's a really tempting idea, isn't it? The thought that Putin is the single source of all the problems, and that once he's gone, Russia will magically become a democracy and a friend of the West. It's a nice thought, but this hopeful vision completely ignores the tough realities of the system Putin spent decades building.
The hard truth is, the system itself is built to stop any real change. The people in charge, the elite, they're all tied together by a common fear of ending up in an international court. And they have this deep, deep belief that NATO is an existential threat. These aren't just Putin's personal opinions, They are the bedrock principles of the entire modern Russian state. And all of this leads to a conclusion you just can't avoid. Succession in Russia is about one thing: control. It is not about reform. Whoever comes next, their number one job will be to get a grip on the system, not to tear it down. For the elite, their own survival is way more important than any dream of democracy.
Okay, let's get to Section 4, Russia's 3 possible futures, ranking the most likely scenarios. So, with all that in mind, what does the future actually look like? Let's break down the 3 most likely scenarios for what a post-Putin Russia could be.
All right, scenario number 1, and the one with the highest probability, is what they call managed continuity. This is a carefully planned handover to a loyal successor, someone who's going to keep the system just as it is. Then you have a medium probability option, collective leadership. Think a weak president trying to share power with a whole council of powerful rivals. Yeah, pretty shaky. And finally, the low probability option, but it's the nightmare scenario, elite fracture. This is an all-out, no-holds-barred power struggle that could literally throw Russia into total chaos.
So, at the end of the day, it's probably best to see Putin as a symptom of Russia's security-obsessed political culture, not the cause of it. Whoever follows him is going to inherit the exact same system, with all the same challenges. So the real question isn't if Russia will change, it's who will be in control of the machine. And the answer to that question, well, it's going to define the next chapter of global history.